Hey there, I'm Lee Rowley, and this is Lee After Dark. Why? Because there's more to being a business leader than just business. Each episode, one brave entrepreneur ejects the elevator pitch and just gets real with us. Today, I am very happy to welcome John Knott. John, how are you today?
Doing great.
Good.
Great to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here, and we were comparing cold weather stories beforehand, and we'll just say that it's not a good thing. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to do is to give you 20 minutes to talk about anything in the world you want but business. Should you succeed, you get 5 minutes at the end to pitch up a storm. Are you ready to play Lee After Dark?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let me set a timer here to keep us honest. And as the question always is, what the heck do you want to get into for the next 20 minutes?
So I'd like to talk about becoming unbelievably successful. That sound interesting to you?
I think that's going to sound interesting to a lot of people.
Well, I hope so.
Myself included.
I noticed over the last several years that I'm seeing a lot of people, especially with COVID, where people are looking to improve their careers. They're looking to establish and stick to goals. And they're basically looking for direction, purpose, and a plan for their life.
Mhm.
And it kind of hit me. So I was laid off right at the start of COVID. So like many, I was affected, and immediately I jumped into my plan, my personal plan, and what I have been striving towards for the last 20 years. And I wrote a book right at that when that happened. It's a free book that I put out there for anybody, who wants it. And it was all based off of what I saw was happening in business. But then I really saw this increase in people that were looking for direction in their life, for purpose, and probably 40 million people laid off. Not a surprise, right? So I
Exactly.
started really thinking about it, and I started thinking about the things that I've been doing over the last 20 years. And I realized that there was an opportunity there to share. And the concept of success is rather shrouded, because a lot of people tell you what they think is success. They'll tell you what you should think is success. But in reality, success is individualized to all of us. What we see as success should be what we want is out of our lives, where we want to live. Now, I started writing a book about this, but I focused on writing for who I was in high school, because in high school, I had a purpose. In junior high, I had a purpose. I wanted to be a big rig driver. I wanted to drive across the country in a big semi. I had romancing the, the uh, different truck drivers on the road. My parents traveled all over the place, and I used to, be in the window pulling down on the horn so that they would blow the horn at me. I was all excited about it. Smokey and the Bandit was a huge thing. I think even my uncle was a truck driver at the time.
Ah,
So I just really fell in love with that. And when I went to junior high, I took an architectural drawing class, and the class had this project-based education. For the entire class, you were going to work on building your own house of the future. And you had to research your job that you wanted to do in the future and figure out what the salary was and take a percentage of that. And then so many years, this is how much you had to invest in your home.
mm.
And so I did it, I was all excited. We went through the drawings, the elevation drawings, and then we built models of our house. So it was a soup to nuts architectural drawing class. Really cool. Loved it. And I was so proud of my 2-bedroom cabin in the woods with a propane tank out back. And I presented my cabin, its model and everything. And I looked at the others in the classroom who had these 2-story mansions and these massive ranches. This one guy had an octagon house with he had a patio that wrapped around both levels of the house covered. But what do they want to be? Not truck drivers. They wanted to be doctors and lawyers and engineers. And I realized then that I didn't want to be a truck driver. But what happened is, yeah, and it's funny because yesterday I just talked to a guy who has spent pretty much his entire life as a truck driver. And we were reminiscing about this and talking about how I had that vision in my life. But what I realized is that a lot of people go through life and they don't have purpose. And for until I was 35 years old, I didn't have a purpose in my life. I didn't have a direction. And I think that's what people are struggling with today, is this lack of direction. So I I started putting pen to paper and I started telling my story. And I don't come from like this disadvantaged home. I had a great family. I was an only child, so it's kind of doted on. My wife will tell you about that. But, but you know, what I realized is that when I was in college or high school, I was what I refer to as the movable middle. I wasn't really smart, so I wasn't doted on, and I wasn't really dumb, so I wasn't doted on. So I kind of fended for myself, that 80%, 80, 90% that sits in the middle. And I was the only person that really motivated me. And I didn't motivate myself because I didn't have anything to motivate myself about. So I started working on this, and I realized over time that success is, how much do you know about Maslow? Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Sure, understood.
You know about that,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not going to pontificate at length, but I understand.
But so you understand, you've got to, according to Maslow, you've got to meet these different needs to be able to get to the very top, what's called self-actualization.
Sure.
And I had started to experience what I would refer to as self-actualization while I was in the military. And usually it was around working with volunteer organizations and going out and doing something that I really felt good about myself doing. Not like I went out there with the purpose of doing that, but afterwards I'd be like, man, that was awesome. It really was beneficial. And I started to realize that really success is about true success is about understanding what your purpose is and achieving it all the time, establishing a vision and getting there on a regular basis. Basically, that you are repeatedly in your life self-actualizing towards your dreams. Some of the other things that I started to realize is that, so I really started focusing on the universal laws. Law of attraction is the big one. Everybody talks about it. Everybody, that's like a huge thing, especially on LinkedIn where we met. Everybody is always talking about that. But the one that I found really fascinating is the law of relativity. And I know we just started this when we were talking about temperature. And I was telling you that, here Monday, it's going to get 6 degrees here in San Antonio, Texas. So if you've never lived anywhere else but San Antonio, Texas, 6 degrees is like ridiculously cold.
Mm.
I mean, it would be like I'm in the Arctic. And you're up there in Ohio and you're going, yeah, right, John. That's like it's like table stakes around here. 6 degrees is nothing. I might get, at negative 20, I might start putting on some really warm clothes.
I'm not in Canada.
Yeah, but I lived in Michigan, so I was just north of you. So I
Yeah,
know.
same. Yeah.
I get it. But that's the whole thing, is that we operate off of what is our relative experiences in life. And if you've always lived in a warm tropical climate, living in Canada it just doesn't make sense. You don't understand that. You don't conceptualize that. But once you develop a purpose and a direction in your life, the law of relativity starts coming in. And this is the reason why I say becoming unbelievably successful. Because if you are working to become unbelievably successful, you will never achieve that. What happens is, as you learn more, as you get closer and closer to your goals of being unbelievably successful, your relativity, your understanding of the things that you're trying to achieve expands. And
Okay.
and when it expands, the goalpost moves. So if you are truly working towards a goal, working towards a purpose, then what happens is that purpose is always getting bigger. One of the things that I decided 20 years ago that I needed for my purpose and vision in my life is I wanted to be a published author. I knew that that was important for what I wanted to achieve in my life. And because I wanted to speak, and I knew all speakers have a book that they can sign afterwards. It's a popular thing, right? Especially the good ones. And what I realized and of course, when I came up with that, I had no idea what I wanted to write. I had no idea how to publish a book. Kindle wasn't even a thing back then, 20 years ago. But what I realized as I was getting closer and closer to that goal, that it's not about publishing one book, that it's about constantly sharing new ideas and experiences. I actually know somebody up in Austin. I got my master black belt certification from his company. And he wrote 3 books. It was actually one big book, and he broke it into 3 volumes. And he's like a million-pound brain, mathematician, statistician, super smart guy. Math was never my strong suit. So he's all about math and Sigma, Six Sigma, more on the Six Sigma than the lean side, but really using data and analytics to run an organization. And he lived off of these 3 books, this whole methodology for years. And I'd see him speak maybe 2-3 times a year at different events that I go to, because he's right up in Austin, so he comes down here a lot. And after time, his material got a little stale because it was always the same thing. And I started to realize that I'm going to have to do a little bit more than one book. So the law of relativity really starts to come into play, because you realize that when you set a goal, like if you make $30,000 a year, you'll think $100,000 a year was a good goal.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to $100,000 a year, you're like, yeah, maybe it's $1 million a year.
Right.
That should be the goal I set it at. Because
Mm-hmm.
the thing is your experiences, your understanding of things change. So it was like one of the big things that I learned. But the most important thing in becoming unbelievably successful is that once you know what you want to become, what your vision is, and who you want to be, then you need to establish a plan for yourself. You need to run your life like you should be running a business. And a lot of people don't do that. So when I was laid off in March of last year, it was kind of a blow. I did not expect it. I had actually talked to the CEO. I was the COO of a company, and I talked to him and I said, I think you should lay me off. I get paid more than anybody else. I know we're having cash flow issues, and I think you should lay me off. And he said, no way. I'll never let you go. You're too important to this company. Your job is secure. Those exact words. And a month later, I was the first person that they called to lay off on a
Ooh.
Friday. And I mean, it was the right thing for the company. I told them to
Right.
do it. The way they did it probably could have been a little bit better,
Yeah, exactly.
but it taught me a lot about like bad leadership. It told me a lot about how things are going to change in business just because of this pandemic. But what I did is I just pulled out. I mean, literally, it was noon. I got off at, of course, you go through the whole, now this can't be happening to me. And I'm angry. I went through kind of like the whole stages in about 5 minutes.
Right.
And I said, okay, what the heck are you going to do, John? And of course, it was on the computer, but I pulled out my plan and I blew the dust off of it. And I went to work. I said, okay, let's restart stuff that I was working on when I started working for that company, and I put that stuff on the shelf. I put my eggs all in their basket instead of my basket. And there's a lot of people last year that ended up in the same boat that I was in, and they just didn't have the plan. They didn't have the direction. And there's a lot of things that as I go through this, this thought process of becoming unbelievably successful, I start to realize that there's a lot of life lessons that I can share, that I think are important to myself and to others. And remember, I wrote this for myself in high school. So, like self-efficacy and locus of control. So self-efficacy is your belief that you can do something. My mom always used to say to me, my wife gives me a hard time about this all the time, that you can do anything you put your mind to. And I find that to be true. If I really care and I want to do something, I can do it. I can be good at that. I mean, you see success stories all over the place where people, they overcome all kinds of adversity because they believed in themselves. They believed in their ability to do it. And the locus of control is that I believe that I am responsible for my future, for the things that happen in my life. I actually say in the book that nothing bad that ever happened to me, or everything bad that ever happened to me, was my fault. And I know there's a lot of things that, like I couldn't necessarily control getting laid off, but I definitely could have been prepared for it. I even said you should lay me off. So and there were things that my wife and I talked about, like, hey, this could happen. So let's think about that. But even how you respond to adversity when it slaps you in the face, that that is one way that you can deal with and take control of your life. A lot of people like to say, well, it's somebody else's problem. Like I just had breakfast with a buddy of mine, and he ran into a deer, but he said that the deer ran into him. And I'm like, wait a minute, did the deer run into your truck on the side or something? No, well, it ran out in front of me. Were you speeding? Were you were you going too fast? Oh, a little bit. Okay, so whose fault maybe was it? Yeah.
Right.
But when you think about this, a lot of times we want to put the blame on something else. And it gets me to another thing that I think about, is that we like to be the victim when things happen to us.
Sure.
And we've got a lot of victims over the last year. A lot of people who had things done to them. COVID done to me. Whether you're a business owner and you're still in business, it was still done to you. But in reality, if you just change your mindset and instead of looking at this as a problem, you look at it as an opportunity, you become a creator. And you start to look for, well, what can I do with that? Where is the opportunities within what's happening now? And that changes everything. I talk to a lot of people about this now. And one of the things that I notice when people really try to become unbelievably successful, there's a couple things that happen in their life that's really interesting. One is you work hard. Okay. If you want to become unbelievably successful, you got to knuckle down and do the work. You got to have the right mindsets. You got to work on your emotional intelligence, and you got to do the work that's going to get you there. You got to implement that plan, not just build it and stick it on a computer shelf.
Right.
And that tends to stress people out because it's a lot of work.
Sure.
So dealing with stress, dealing with the stress of trying to get where you want to go and always pushing every day, that's important. And the other thing is motivation. And motivation, it's one thing to like watch motivational videos and motivational speakers and do things that are motivational.
Mhm.
But what I find is that when people start to become unbelievably successful, then what happens is they sit back and go, wow, I'm doing pretty good. I think I can relax for a little bit. And they get complacent. And complacency, I was a cop in the Air Force for 10 years. And a cop in the Air Force is an extremely boring job. We used to have this saying that the job was 99% sheer boredom and 1% sheer panic. And because of that, the job, people became very complacent in the job. And in security, especially in that type of security, complacency kills.
Sure.
When you're successful, complacency will actually kill you. But I think that this is a really important topic right now, and something that really people should be thinking about is like, do I have a plan? Do I have a purpose? Where am I going? Because they might have spent the last 6 months, year waiting for somebody to solve this problem of the pandemic, which isn't going away. And it's time to actually start thinking about, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going?
Fantastic. John, we'll end with this on this section. What one step do you think someone could take who's listening to move toward having a plan, toward having greater clarity about what they want, what their purpose is?
So the very first step is to really define why you exist, what's your purpose in life. And you may have seen this. They call it an ikigai, but that's just a name that has come over time. But it's basically a Venn diagram with 4 circles. And it says,
Mhm.
what is it that I do well? What is it that I like to do? What is it that people need? And what are people willing to pay for? Okay, so those 3 or 4 circles overlapping, where you have an answer, the same answer in all 4 of those circles, can become your purpose. And for me, that was all about improving organizations. I can help
Good.
businesses improve. That's what I love to do. And I know people need it. And I know they're willing to pay for it. And I've gotten very, very good at that. But figuring out what your purpose is, your why. I mean, you read Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Mhm.
Great book. Really think about, why do I exist? What am I here for? And that's like the number one thing is like, I don't have purpose. I need to set some goals and I need to meet them. Well, goals towards what? Where are you going? What are you trying to become? And then the next thing, once you have that, once you have your purpose defined, what I do, what I really can do, and maybe you're not really all that good at it today, but you want to get really good at it. The next thing is to say, where do I see myself in the future? Now, for me, it was when I looked at what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, I wanted basically companies to pay me to come and speak about improving their organization. And I would basically travel on their dime, and I would sightsee, take pictures, play golf in different places around the United States, because that's what I love to do. And I asked myself 20 years ago, what would they pay for? And I started to really picture, like, what's that high dollar person actually look like that's going to go to a big company and be respected, and that they would actually pay a significant amount of money for me to travel on their dime. And I said, well, they would pay for a PhD. I didn't have an associate's degree 20 years ago. They would pay for somebody who had a lot of experience, but I had only been 2 years in my job, so I didn't have it then. They would pay for somebody who had credentials, that had certifications and training that they could point to, the alphabet soup behind somebody's name. I didn't have any of those. And back then, those weren't really a big thing. Today, they're all over the place. And the certifications after my name would take up 2 business cards. So
Wow.
but I started to develop that plan. As I already said, I knew that every good speaker has a book to sign afterwards, because it kind of like proves that you know what the heck you're talking about, right?
Sure.
So I had to be a published author, and now I know more than one book is important. That's
Hmm.
kind of key.
Yeah.
I
Speaking
knew
of
that
that, you
I
do
knew
have
I
an.
needed a strong network so that I could talk to people like you and get to know you, and and get my name out there to be recognized. So you have to have that strong professional network in your career, in your industry, and online. And the
Exactly.
last thing, one of the most important things, and hopefully this has kind of stood out a little bit in this, is you have to be a really good public speaker if you're expecting somebody to pay for you to come and be a public speaker.
That
So,
tracks. Sure.
and I had learned about, or I basically had built this when I was just starting out in Toastmasters 20 years ago. And I've been a
Ah,
Toastmaster for 20 years now. working towards accredited speaker status with Toastmasters, and eventually becoming certified with the National Speakers Association. But those are, you start to, when you know what you want to do and you know where you want to go, the rest of it is just gap analysis. What is it going to take for me to get there, and how long will it take? And I realized, because my longest pole in the tent was education. I didn't even have an associate's degree. I'd enlisted in the Air Force with no degree, and I wanted to have a PhD. And I knew that that would take working, having a full-time job, and working, trying to get school, that I would take about 20 years to do that. So that became my 20-year plan. But in some people's case, it might be a 2 or a 5-year plan to get where you want to be in your future. But as I've said, law of relativity,
Sure,
the
sure.
goalpost is always going to move, and you're going to be like, well, I guess I need to do these things too. So
Right. I think that's an important point, because I think for a lot of people, a 20-year plan would be so daunting that you'd just be like, nah, I'm not gonna, well, how would you know where to start? But, if you start with 1 year or 6 months or 3 months or whatever your brain can handle right now, then, as you say, then it exponentially expands your scope of opportunity.
right.
So,
I mean, my first step, obviously, to my degree was to get my associates, which happened in a year. And then the next step was to get a bachelor's degree. I had no idea what I wanted as a PhD, no idea where I was going to get it. I moved like 3 times since I developed that plan. So it's not like I knew where I was really going, but I just knew, like, okay, that's where I want to be. I didn't on my journey, my wife and I, we own a horse farm. So I think you know that. So we have a 100-acre horse farm. That was not in my plan. I did
okay.
not say I
No
want to
horse.
I want to have a horse farm in there. But
Okay.
what I did when we decided to do this, I made that part of my plan to say, well, being a business owner falls into my business experience. And if I understand how to run businesses, a large operation like this, and I know how to improve it and make it better and make it successful, that's just more on my experience bucket. So it became part of my plan, even though having a horse farm was not in the plan.
But I'm assuming that it's enriched your life, though, in ways that you hadn't
Super
expected.
powerful. Yeah, super powerful. I
Yeah.
I was from Detroit, Michigan, so I, honestly, I had a horse when I was in the Air Force. I was previously married, and I probably would have killed that horse because I didn't know anything about horses. And I come to find out now that horses are like, it's really something to take care of a horse. It's a whole lot of work, and there are a whole lot of things that can happen to a horse that you just don't understand unless you're around horse people. We
Mm,
actually, here at the farm, we have a program. It's called Path to Horse Ownership, and it's because of people like me, the idiots out there that get a horse and have no idea what they're doing. I want them to know what they're doing before they get that horse, to
awesome.
go in eyes wide open
Yes.
and fully understand. So, but yeah, that's just, the things that you learn, and you grow because of that. And we opened up Equitherapy program for veterans. Anybody struggling with post-traumatic stress, if they get free Equitherapy. We've done all kinds of things, and we have a lot of fun here too.
That's really cool. I hadn't thought of that as being therapy. I'm personally terrified of horses, but
Oh my God.
for some,
Well,
for those who aren't, that I can see how that could be a fantastic benefit.
that's the first, most people, when they see this 1,200 to 2,000 pound animal staring them in the face, that's a scary thing, right? Oh my God, that thing's going to step on me and kill me.
Right.
So the first thing we work with is really, how do you be safe around a horse? How do you walk, go around the back of a horse so it doesn't kick you?
Right.
how
Okay.
do you how do you do that so that you become confident in being around a horse? Because a lot of the people that come out here, they're terrified of them, absolutely
Okay.
terrified. And it's understandable. It's a big animal, and our horses in the program aren't scary. They really aren't. They're very, we've trained them, and we got horses that have the right demeanor. It's not like we have this wild stallion that you go out there and try to fight to the ground. It's like, all right, you did good.
Right. Mm.
But the idea behind this is that you become confident in yourself first, because you know how to be safe around this animal, and you know that, hey, I'm in charge. And a lot of people dealing with post-traumatic stress, they don't feel in charge. They don't feel in charge of themselves.
Yeah,
And this is like that small little win that, like, there's this thing that's like way, way heavier and bigger than me, and I can control it. I mean, it's like a car, and I've got control over that car from the outside.
that's a
That's like
fascinating
first. That's
perspective.
like first step.
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's growing in popularity. In Canada, they 2 years ago they started actually funding equitherapy as a way of working on your post-traumatic stress. But
Hmm.
I've had people come out of here. They'll come here first day, and I will get a phone call, text message, or an email after their first session and say, this is the most relaxed I've ever felt. I had a lady that was a retired lieutenant colonel who came out here with her daughter, and her daughter was taking lessons, horse riding lessons here, because we have for profit. That's what, funds everything. And then the nonprofit on the side. And she had been here for a month, and we were sitting, just her and I, watching her daughter ride out in the field. And she turned to me and said, John, when a week before I came here a month ago, I was contemplating suicide, and you saved my life. And I was just like, when she said
That's
that, I'm like,
amazing.
I'm going to do this for freaking ever. But we've had people that, this guy named Z, that he came out, he wasn't even retired yet. And first session, terrified of horses. He's walking around with this horse. The horse's name is Spirit of the Law. And the horse yawned. And I don't know if you've ever seen a horse actually yawn, with a big mouth opens up and, doing one of these things. It can be kind of scary, especially when you're scared of horses. Like, is that what's it going to do? Is it going to bite me?
Right.
And the trainer that was working with him just said, no, he just has taken your stress from you, and he's relieving it.
Hmm.
And the guy handed the reins of the halter rope over, or the lead rope over, to the trainer and said, we're done now.
Oh wow.
And he was driving home, and he texts me, and he's like, I can't believe how relaxed I am right now. And he retired and got himself a job and was able to become productive in his life because of that. But it's like, I have stories for like days about the effect of equitherapy. So positive.
I really appreciate you bringing that to Lee After Dark. That's what we. Seriously, these are the things that we love to see, because what's going on in the world. We're becoming isolated. We're becoming more stressed.
That's the reason why I created my programs for executives. Stress is up by 800%. And I was like, I can do something with this. For 5 years, I've been doing equitherapy. I can work with an executive, bring them in. They pay for it. It's not free, but I can help them. And that, like the power of that, go, you know, get over your fear and go to a horse farm and get somebody to teach you about working with a horse. You'll be amazed, because it's just because dogs, they always say dogs they feel you, they sense what's going on, they use a lot of dogs in therapy. a
Okay.
horse a horse actually has so much deeper understanding of what's going on. So the difference between a dog and a horse is that a dog is a pack animal, they're carnivore, and a horse is a herd animal and a herbivore. So the dog's function in the brain is to form into a pack and kill things, hunt and kill them. They may not do that. And yeah, they're a sensing animal, But a horse's whole job is to form into a herd for protection, and they use the whole herd as sensing elements. So you can have 5, 6 horses out in this field all spread out, and something creeps up on one of them and it spooks, the whole herd spooks because they're all connected. They use the herd as safety. So when you start working with a horse, all the work is ground based work. It's not riding. We're not working on your riding confidence here. We're working on you working and
Hmm.
relieving your stress. The horse wants to bring you into its herd. It wants to feel safe with you, and it senses, especially with somebody with post traumatic stress, people dealing with stress, and then on the outside they're trying, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. But on the inside, it's like, yeah,
Mm.
I'm terrified, and something's going to set me off, and I'm going to just, I don't know what's going to happen. And the horse is all the time. The horse is like, what the heck is going on with you? Like, I can sense that, and they won't work with you. So you have to, one, you groom the horse, which horses actually work together. You ever seen two horses where they will stand like this and chew on each other's back?
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
because they can't do this.
Right.
So the horses work to help each other. And when you're grooming a horse, you're like being like a horse. Actually, if a horse likes what you're doing, it might reach its head around and try to groom you and chew
Hmm.
on you. That it actually happens.
I could.
And that's the reason why it's happening. They're not being aggressive or something like that. They just want to, like, I want to return the favor.
Huh,
But what
love that.
what happens is, and they give off pheromones as well. Horses, when you rub on their coat, it gives off a very relaxing pheromone. So people don't, they don't understand this effect, but over, just a 1 hour session working with a horse, you just be like, wow, like I feel great. I feel so relaxed. It's just amazing. But it's the power of horses. It's quite incredible.
Who knew? Well, you knew, but
I
now
didn't know
we
when
all know too.
honestly, I didn't know when I started. I just
Yeah.
saw like what was happening, and we saw like videos of this, and we went to another equitherapy place that once a week does veterans equitherapy, because that's what we wanted to specialize in. There's a lot of equitherapy out of there. A lot of it has to do with riding and the motion. So with people with Asperger's or autism, that motion, the feeling of riding a horse, that natural, it helps them.
Okay. Huh.
And which is, there's actually a guy that's working on developing a machine that simulates the riding of a horse. But that's just that feeling alone has helped a lot of people with disabilities, a lot of people with certain conditions. And there's a lot of they bring kids out of high school that are troubled youth, and they do this program called vaulting, where it's all about building confidence, riding this big animal and being in charge, and being able to do this. And but the thing is, they do it, you've seen them where they, the horse is moving and they run up next to it and they grab hold of it and they jump up on it, and then they might spin on it. This is a real thing. Like, this is a equitherapy sport, an activity that people train and teach it. It's a pretty amazing thing. It's like a whole world of horsemanship that a lot of people don't know about.
Clearly.
Yeah,
Wow. That is
pretty cool.
fantastic. Well, I am going to have to move on to the next section because we have completed the 20-minute Lee After Dark not talking about your business challenge. So, congratulations, and invisible confetti rains from the sky and all that jazz. So, being a man of my word, I want to make sure to give you up to 5 minutes to talk about, your business, how people can get in touch with you, offers, the usual pitchy stuff that most people spend the whole podcast on. So, the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, awesome. I really appreciate it. It was fun. I probably could go on and on about these topics, but if you're interested in following the progress of the book that I'm writing, Becoming Unbelievably Successful, it's https colon slash slash bit.ly. So it's a bit.ly link slash get busy 2020, or http no s. I don't know why they do this. bit.ly slash become us. Becoming Unbelievably Successful. Become
Okay.
US. So if you want to follow the books and the activity that's going on, there's a couple links out there. People can find me, John Knotts, at most of the major social media. I'm very active, as you know, on LinkedIn, but
Mhm.
also on Facebook. My business is Crosscutter Enterprises, and I'm a personal and professional business coach and consultant. My website is CROSSCTR, crosscutter.com. And if anybody's interested in talking to me about horses, our horse is Fine Print Farms, and we're fineprintfarms.com on the internet. And you can learn about our Equitherapy program, which is actually called Reckless Rangers. This whole story behind
Ah.
Reckless. Reckless was the most famous warhorse in history, believe it or not.
Okay. Okay.
She was a Marine. She was actually a Marine horse. And she's the only horse that's ever been given a rank of sergeant and then promoted in the military. Pretty
So
cool, huh?
you could potentially have a horse as your boss
Yes.
instead of a horse as that. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, but
Maybe
it's a
both. Who knows?
really incredible story. I think the book is called Sergeant Reckless, an American Warhorse. I think that's the name of the book
Huh.
that they have out there. There's the horse is interned at Camp Pendleton over in California, and both on the East Coast and the West Coast at Camp Pendleton. I don't know what Marine base is at over on the East Coast where they have it. They have a statue that they erected to the horse, I think a year after we stood up our Equitherapy program. And it was funny because we were looking for a name, and we have on our farm, we have 9 little stalls that are off of their arena. And I actually want to turn those into guest rooms so people can come out here and like Airbnb and stay.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to fit those things out as actual, just a guest room and put a bathroom down at the end of them. And I was trying to think of names for them. Like, wow, why don't we call them? Why don't we name each room after the top 10 horses, horse names? And I started looking war horses, and I see this thing, Sergeant Reckless, #1 war horse, top. I'm like, who's Sergeant Reckless? Now, if you're a Marine, you probably already know who that horse is,
Yes.
but there's a lot of people that don't. But it's the story behind this horse is absolutely incredible. It's just amazing. So, but yeah, you can find me at all those things, and I look forward to people connecting, following me on LinkedIn, especially. That's where we generate a lot of great conversation out there. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed it is. So we will have all of those links in the show notes so that people can connect with you directly
Awesome.
on all those channels and sites. Cool. All right. Well, we are out of time, but if you enjoyed Lee After Dark more than the rest of the Trek out there, then subscribe to my daggone YouTube channel at leeafterdark.com. It's feeling lonely, people. Go over there, show some love, subscribe, and we're on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Anchor. I don't know. We're a bunch of different places. So if you like podcasts, check us out, and you can find us all in little itty bitty places too. So until next time, this is Lee Rowley with my good friend John Knotts saying be present and be well.